Welcome to the new video of NeuroPhilos. Get ready to dive into a gripping tale that will leave you breathless, thinking, and inspired. Whether you're here for the mystery, the drama, or the unexpected twists, you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe so you never miss another powerful story. Let's begin. The Hidden Saboteurs. Have you ever walked away from a conversation and felt smaller? Not because the words were openly cruel or because a fight had erupted, but because something invisible seemed to drain you? It is a strange, almost imperceptible sensation. You sit across from someone, perhaps a friend, a colleague, even a family member, and you give them your time, your patience, your kindness. You listen, you nod, you try to understand. You pour out generosity as though love alone will keep the bond alive. But afterward, when you are alone, the mirror tells a different story. Your energy feels dimmed. Your confidence trembles. You feel tired without reason, insecure without explanation, and lost without a map. And then comes the most unsettling part. You keep going back. Again and again, you re-enter these spaces. You laugh at their jokes, you excuse their remarks, you rationalize their moods. You convince yourself that this is normal, that every relationship requires compromise. You tell yourself that it's better to hold on to a half-connection than face the sharp ache of loneliness. But deep down, your spirit knows something is wrong. Deep down, you sense that what is happening is not coincidence. It is a pattern. There are people who orbit your life like shadows wearing masks. They pose as allies, as confidants, as those who only want the best for you. Yet behind the kind smile lurks resentment. Behind the sweet encouragement is the acidic desire to see you stumble. They can't bear the light you carry, the quiet dignity of your growth, the subtle brilliance of your presence. Your light unsettles them, and so, slowly, strategically, they set out to dim it. They don't need to attack openly. They don't raise their voices or slam doors. No, these saboteurs work with surgical precision. Their weapons are disguised as affection, their barbs camouflaged within compliments. And because you want so desperately to believe in love, in loyalty, in family, you don't see the poison dripping from their honeyed words. You absorb the sting and call it misunderstanding. You minimize your own pain and call it maturity. You continue to feed the very mouths that bite you, hoping that one day, kindness will cure envy. But here is the hard truth, it will not. As long as you keep pretending not to notice, the cycle will never end. These people are not oblivious. They know what they're doing. They know the precise tone to use when offering advice that makes you doubt yourself. They know how to disguise control as concern, criticism as love, and envy as humor. And the longer you stay blind, the more they thrive. The reason this cycle continues is not because they are powerful. It is because you refuse to see. Somewhere inside, you cling to the illusion that their presence means connection, that their approval means safety, that their smiles mean love. You would rather hold on to the shadow of a bond than face the abyss of betrayal. And so, you rationalize. You tell yourself they didn't mean it, that you're too sensitive, that maybe the problem is you. But enough. Enough of dressing poison in flowers. Enough of accepting crumbs of affection while starving your soul. Enough of mistaking endurance for strength. Keeping these people in your life is not a noble act of kindness, it is a form of self-sabotage. Every time you allow someone to belittle your light, you confirm to yourself that your light is not worth protecting. Every time you ignore the subtle aggression, you teach your heart that pain is the price of connection. This message is not for those who want comfort. It is for those who are tired of being drained by those who should have supported them. It is for those who are ready to wake up and see the masks for what they are. To recognize that behind the soft voice lies envy, behind the embrace lies possession, and behind the smile lies sabotage. The question is no longer whether these people exist. The question is, how much longer will you pretend not to see? The projection of the shadow. When we imagine betrayal, we often picture drama. Raised voices. Shattered plates. Scandals that announce themselves with thunder and lightning. But the most dangerous betrayals rarely arrive so boldly. They don't come with the violence of an explosion, they seep in like smoke, subtle and suffocating. They disguise themselves as affection. They arrive wrapped in tender words, in warm hugs, in smiles that don't quite reach the eyes. This is what makes them so insidious. The enemy does not stand outside your gates. They live inside the walls, wearing the costume of a friend. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist, gave us a framework for understanding this disturbing dynamic. He called it the projection of the shadow. According to Jung, every human being carries within themselves feelings they'd rather deny: envy, insecurity, frustration, the hunger for control. Most people don't want to acknowledge these darker parts of themselves. Instead of facing them honestly, they repress them. But the shadow does not vanish, it seeks expression. And when people refuse to own their shadow, they project it onto others. That other often ends up being you. Perhaps you've experienced it, a colleague who dismisses your hard work with a smirk and a single word, lucky. A family member who insists you've changed since your success, as if growth were something to be ashamed of. A friend who cheers for you only as long as your victories don't exceed theirs, their applause growing quieter with every step you take ahead. These are not coincidences. These are projections. Your progress unsettles them. Your joy agitates the unhealed wounds they refuse to face. And so, without ever naming it, they try to cut you down to size, not because of who you are, but because of who they cannot bear to become. But here is the cruel twist: they rarely strike openly. To confront you directly would expose their own insecurities. Instead, they choose a subtler, more corrosive path. They act as though they love you. They offer helpful advice that plants doubt. They cloak criticism in concern. They turn envy into humor, disguising their barbs as harmless jokes. And because their strategies are hidden beneath affection, you begin to doubt yourself. Maybe I am imagining things, you tell yourself. Maybe I'm being too sensitive, too paranoid. Maybe I should be grateful, they're just looking out for me. This self-doubt is exactly what they want. The more you question your instincts, the easier it becomes for them to maintain control. You stop trusting your gut, and in that silence, their shadow continues to seep into your life. And when you finally try to pull away, when you create even the smallest distance, their mask shifts again. Suddenly, they are the victims. Suddenly, you are accused of being cold, ungrateful, distant. They reverse the script, forcing you into the role of villain. After everything I've done for you, they'll sigh, as though love were a transaction. And guilt, oh, guilt, becomes the chain that binds you tighter. This is not affection. This is not love. This is emotional manipulation at its most sophisticated. It is vampirism disguised as empathy. They drain your energy while convincing you that you're the one in debt. And yet, why do you allow it? Why do you tolerate this silent theater of falseness? Perhaps because some part of you still wants to believe in the illusion. Some part of you prefers the performance of connection, even if it is hollow, to the terror of emptiness. Some part of you fears that acknowledging the truth will mean losing not just a person, but the hope of being loved. But illusions have a cost. Every time you silence your instincts to preserve the bond, you betray yourself. Every time you excuse their behavior, you teach your soul that betrayal is acceptable. The projection of the shadow is not just about what they reveal, it's about what you refuse to see. And here lies the bitter truth: they will not stop. They cannot stop. For as long as you allow it, they will keep projecting, keep draining, keep sabotaging. The only way to break free is not to change them, but to finally see them clearly. To see the shadow not as your burden, but as theirs. The mirror within. It is easy, almost comforting, to point your finger outward. To say, they are toxic. They are envious. They are false. It gives you a sense of distance, as though the problem lives outside you, as though their shadow has nothing to do with your own story. But Carl Jung, with his unsettling clarity, warned us of a truth most people spend their entire lives avoiding: everything that irritates us in others can lead us to a deeper understanding of ourselves. That sentence is not comfortable. It isn't meant to be. Because it suggests that the problem is never only with them. It is also with you. Think about it: why do certain people keep appearing in your life? Why do you attract, again and again, those who smile while belittling you, those who sabotage under the guise of support? This is not random. This is not fate being cruel. It is your own unconscious pulling you back into a familiar script. Maybe it began in childhood. Perhaps you were taught, directly or indirectly, that to be loved you had to be pleasing. That your worth came not from who you were, but from what you gave up. Maybe you learned that silence kept the peace, that forgiveness earned you approval, that swallowing pain was the price of belonging. Perhaps love in your earliest years was never given freely, it was rationed, mixed with criticism, laced with disappointment. And so you adapted. You became the one who understood, the one who excused, the one who endured. Somewhere along the way, you confused sacrifice with loyalty. You mistook silence for strength. And you carried this unconscious contract into your adult relationships. Now, when someone subtly disrespects you, you do not recoil. You normalize it. When someone drains your energy, you do not walk away. You rationalize it. When someone sabotages your joy, you do not confront them. You absorb the wound and call it love. The truth is, the toxic people around you are mirrors. They reflect back to you how much you still fear displeasing others. They reveal how quickly you abandon yourself to keep the peace. They show you the guilt you feel at the very thought of setting boundaries. Their poison works only because somewhere inside you, a part of you is still convinced you deserve it. This is not malice on your part. It is habit. It is trauma. It is the echo of an old story you've never fully questioned. That story whispers, you are only valuable if you sacrifice. You are only lovable if you endure. And so you repeat the cycle. You unconsciously seek out the same dynamics, not because you enjoy pain, but because pain feels familiar. But here lies the paradox: as long as you focus only on their falseness, you avoid facing your own omission. You avoid the wound inside you that permits the poison to remain. You keep the spotlight on their behavior so you don't have to look at the patterns buried within yourself. And so, even when you recognize manipulation, you hesitate to act. Because acting would mean rewriting that old contract. It would mean saying, I will no longer sacrifice myself for love. And that sentence terrifies you more than the sabotage itself. But you need to hear this: endurance is not evolution. Silence is not strength. Loyalty does not mean submission. The fake friends, the envious colleagues, the draining family members, they will not change. Their role in your life is not to transform, but to force you to. They exist as the mirrors you've tried not to look into. They show you the parts of yourself still chained to fear, still afraid of being unloved if you stand tall. And this is why Jung said the encounter with oneself is the most avoided journey of all. Because to confront yourself, to see your own wounds, is far more terrifying than pointing at the flaws of others. Yet until you take that journey, you will continue calling imprisonment friendship, and mistaking chains for bonds. The question now is not whether others are false. The question is, how long will you keep betraying yourself? The invisible damage. Not all wounds bleed. Not all battles leave visible scars. Sometimes the most destructive harm arrives quietly, so softly that you cannot point to the moment it began. That is the nature of emotional sabotage. It does not explode into your life with shouts or violence. It creeps in silently, settling into the pauses of conversations, into the weight of a glance, into the subtext of a seemingly harmless joke. This is why it is so difficult to recognize. No one insults you outright. No one strikes you. Instead, they drain you slowly, piece by piece, until one day you wake up and realize that something vital inside you has dimmed. It begins subtly. At first, you doubt a choice. You hear a comment, "Are you sure that's the right decision?" Delivered with a smile, and suddenly your confidence falters. Later, another remark disguised as concern makes you question yourself again. Over time, you start hesitating before speaking. You measure your words carefully, not to avoid conflict, but to avoid their disapproval. You mold yourself into something smaller, something less threatening, something easier for them to accept. And then, without even noticing, you begin to disappear. Days turn into weeks, and you wake up tired though you've done nothing. You feel anxious without cause, heavy without explanation, sad without reason. You look at yourself and wonder why you've grown so weak, so sensitive, so dramatic. But this is not weakness. This is the effect of a psychological attack, one that works not by breaking you in a single blow, but by eroding you over time. Carl Jung spoke of the energy that flows in human relationships. Every interaction is not just an exchange of words but of psychic force. When you connect with someone carrying envy, repression, or hostility they refuse to acknowledge, that energy does not vanish. It enters the space between you. It seeps into your field. And though you may try to rationalize it, telling yourself you're imagining things, convincing yourself they didn't mean it, your body knows the truth. Your intuition feels it. Your spirit recognizes it. This is why you feel drained after certain encounters. Why your chest tightens in their presence. Why your joy shrinks the moment they walk into the room. Your nervous system is warning you, whispering that something is deeply wrong. But instead of listening, you adapt. You smile back. You excuse the behavior. You ignore the knot in your stomach, all in the name of keeping peace. And so the damage spreads. Slowly, invisibly, but relentlessly. The cost of these relationships is not only emotional. They impact your body, your health, your sense of identity. They cloud your thoughts, sow confusion in your decisions, blur your ability to trust yourself. You begin comparing yourself to others, thinking you are flawed, too fragile, too easily hurt. But the truth is not that you are fragile. The truth is that you are under attack, and the attack is designed to be invisible. This is why confronting it is so hard. Because to admit what is happening is to accept that someone close to you, someone you trusted, has been undermining you all along. It requires a courage most people avoid their entire lives. It is easier to keep pretending, to keep adapting, to keep giving love to those who feed on it. Easier, until the day you realize that pretending has cost you your soul. And yet, there is hope in this realization. For once you see the invisible damage, you cannot unsee it. Once you recognize the pattern, the illusion begins to crack. Awareness is painful, yes, but it is also the beginning of freedom. The time comes when you must decide, will you keep smiling at those who secretly wish for your downfall, or will you gather the courage to say enough? Because courage is the only medicine for this kind of poison. And courage, as you will soon see, is exactly what it takes to shatter the illusion completely. The silence that frees. There comes a moment when the curtain falls. When all the small doubts, all the passive-aggressive comments, all the hollow smiles finally align into one undeniable truth: this person is not your supporter, they are your saboteur. The illusion shatters, and though it is painful, it is also liberating. For the first time, you see clearly. Every disguised criticism, every manipulative gesture, every moment that made you feel not enough suddenly makes sense. But recognition alone is not enough. Knowing the truth is only the first cut into the chain. To break it completely, you must act. And that, perhaps, is the hardest part. Because these people are not strangers you can easily block or walk away from. They are woven into your life, family members, partners, colleagues, longtime friends. They've shared in your milestones, stood beside you in photos, spoken words that once felt like love. And that history whispers in your ear, you can't just walk away. You owe them. You must endure. But here is the truth you need to hear: endurance is not nobility. Endurance, in these cases, is self-destruction. Every moment you remain tethered to those who thrive on your diminishment, you sacrifice pieces of yourself. And loyalty, when given to those who only drain, is not love. It is servitude. Carl Jung once wrote, "You do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." To become whole, you must make the darkness conscious, not only in them but in yourself. You must acknowledge the part of you that allowed their grip to remain, and then you must choose differently. That choice often begins with silence. Not the silence of submission, the silence of withdrawal. When you stop explaining yourself, when you stop justifying, when you stop reacting, the game loses its fuel. You deny them the satisfaction of your energy. You deny them access to your heart. And though they will resist, accusing you of coldness, guilt-tripping you, painting you as ungrateful, you must hold your ground. Boundaries will follow. You may not always be able to sever ties completely. Some people remain entangled through family, work, or circumstance. But boundaries are not walls of anger, they are shields of self-respect. They say, "You can exist in my world, but you cannot touch my soul." And then comes the loneliness. Ah, yes, the loneliness. It is perhaps the most frightening part. Because once you step away, the space left behind feels unbearable at first. The silence echoes. The absence burns. You wonder if you made a mistake. But this emptiness, painful as it is fertile ground. In the space once filled with manipulation, your strength can take root. In the silence left behind, your true voice can rise again. For something remarkable happens when you finally step away. The silence you leave becomes louder than any confrontation. To those who once fed on your energy, your absence is unbearable. They are forced to face themselves, stripped of the mirror you once provided. And you, freed from their shadow, begin to see yourself with new clarity. You say no without guilt. You protect your energy as fiercely as you protect those you love. You learn to listen again to that quiet intuition that always knew the truth. And in that listening, you discover a deeper kind of loyalty, the loyalty to yourself. You owe nothing to those who tried to diminish you. You owe everything to the self that endured, that waited, that is now ready to rise. So, the question remains, will you choose the comfort of illusion, or the discomfort of truth? One will keep you bound, the other will set you free. Freedom does not begin with confrontation. It begins with refusal, with the decision to stop dancing to the music of manipulation. And when you stop, when you walk away, when you protect yourself as though your life depends on it, it does, then you reclaim not just your energy, but your soul. That is the silence that frees.